Eli Mercer was dying. Not in the dramatic, bullets flying, slow-motion kind of way, but the quiet, unspectacular way that crept into bones and lungs over decades. Born with a brittle immune system and a laundry list of genetic anomalies, Eli had spent more time in hospital beds than actual ones. His legs were thin, his voice weak, and the strongest part of him, most agreed, was his sarcasm, which made it all the more absurd when a beam of pale green light pulled him from his apartment bed and deposited him into the middle of an alien tribunal. He blinked up at the obsidian-colored walls of the chamber, shaped like an amphitheater. Every seat was filled with something inhuman, tentacled, feathered, crystalline, and all of them were staring at him with the same look scientists used when dissecting frogs. A voice, smooth, synthetic, and cold, spoke above him. Subject, Eli Mercer. Designation, weakest viable human. Judgment, culling protocol initiated. He coughed. Wow, guess I won the lottery. Silence. The tribunal didn't understand humor. Most didn't even blink. A massive being, six-legged and encased in chrome exoskeletal plates, stepped forward. You're the least fit among your kind, it said, its voice like a metal door creaking open. To protect galactic genetic stability, such elements must be eliminated. Eli wheezed a laugh. You abducted me to kill me because I'm too pathetic to live? No, because you represent a potential flaw. Earth is volatile. Humanity is under review. Ah, there it was. The Galactic Concord. He remembered reading about them. Earth scientists had celebrated humanity's acceptance into the Concord like it was first contact with gods. But of course, they hadn't seen the fine print. Assimilation came with conditions. Conformity, stability, order. And humans were anything but. Eli sat up slowly, pain shooting through his joints. Let me get this straight, he said, grimacing. You think I'm a threat to your utopia because I'm defective? Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Translated mental impressions, not speech. A serpentine alien with glowing eyes hissed, you carry multiple genetic disorders. You are an evolutionary cul-de-sac. Yeah, Eli said dryly. That's what my school nurse said, too. Still no laughter. Tough crowd. He looked around the room, noting the tech, levitating drones, neural link bands, organic computing organisms tethered to the walls. All impossibly advanced, all humming in silent unison. But for all their power, their movements were mechanical, precise. Sterile. He was the only thing in the room breathing unevenly. Let me tell you something, Eli said, his voice gaining an edge. You think weakness is a liability, but you don't know what it means to endure. The tribunal stirred. I've been dying since I was born, he continued. Every morning I wake up in pain. Every night, I go to sleep wondering if it'll be my last. I've lost more than most people ever get to have. But I'm still here. I laugh. I dream. I hope. And that makes me dangerous to you, doesn't it? Several tribunal members shifted uncomfortably. One, a slender, bioluminescent being, touched the side of its temple. Its glow flickered. This emotional projection, it murmured to another. It's contaminating the chamber. Contaminating? Eli tried to stand. His knees buckled. A drone zipped toward him, but he waved it off. No, don't help. That ruins the moment. He looked up and forced a grin through the pain. You don't get it. You picked me because I was the weakest. But weakness isn't the opposite of strength. It's the forge of it. A tremor ran through the chamber. Lights dimmed. A low-frequency hum began to pulse from the neural walls. Eli didn't notice. His focus was on the tribunal, their confusion, the first cracks of doubt. For the first time in their rule, they couldn't classify something, couldn't quantify it, couldn't control it. Emotion, hope, the terrifying unpredictability of the human spirit. And as systems flickered and guards shifted nervously, one thing became abundantly clear. They hadn't abducted a flaw. They had awakened a variable they didn't understand. And in their arrogance, the Galactic Concord had just made the most dangerous mistake in its long, calculated history. Panic to the Galactic Concord was an anomaly, something that only happened to lesser civilizations. And yet, it spread like fire across the tribunal chamber. Eli Mercer stood unsteadily in the center, unaware of the quantum alerts flashing through every data stream, unaware that entire security systems were locking down with no one touching them. He simply rubbed his temples. Headache, he muttered. Great. Abducted, and now migraines. Classic Monday. Around him, members of the tribunal stumbled from their platforms. One of them, a species known as the Trentari, highly sensitive to emotional frequencies, collapsed in a twitching heap, its translucent skin pulsing erratically. An aide, a smaller, jellyfish-like Concord analyst, floated toward the lead magistrate, communicating in high-frequency chirps. The human's neural field is creating a resonance, psychic distortion in the empathic spectrum. It's contaminating our systems, the magistrate growled, mandibles clicking. Quarantine the chamber. The floating jellyfish whirled toward Eli. Human, cease projection immediately. Eli squinted. Projection? Dude, I'm just tired and a little freaked out. But the system didn't see fear. It felt something deeper. Something the Concord hadn't trained for. Resilience. Eli had no weapons, no physical power, but his mind was a patchwork of experiences the Concord couldn't model. Decades of navigating pain, loneliness, anxiety. His emotional architecture was so raw, so human, that it bypassed every logic barrier the Concord had in place. One of the guards moved toward him, a 7-foot-tall brute encased in organic armor. It raised its neural lance and stopped. Its eyes widened. It was shaking. "WH, what is that?" it whispered. Eli turned to look. "Me?" "No," the guard said. "What's inside you?" Eli didn't answer, mostly because he didn't know. But another being in the room did. A young technician, small, spindly, amphibious, watched Eli with wide, shimmering eyes. Unlike the others, she wasn't struggling. She was fascinated. Her species, the Aerolin, were semi-empaths. She could feel what others felt. But Eli was broadcasting emotions unlike anything she'd experienced. Curiosity drove her to approach. She kneeled beside him, ignoring the chaos erupting in the chamber. "You are hurting," she said gently. He gave her a crooked smile. "Always. But there's also something else. A fire. Stubbornness," Eli said. "It's genetic." She reached out, fingertips lightly brushing his temple. In that moment, her mind opened, and she saw it. A child in a hospital bed, smiling through the pain. A teenager learning to walk again after his legs gave out. A man reading poetry in the dark, dreaming of other worlds. A soul that refused to give up, even when every cell in his body told him to. The Aerolin reeled back, eyes wide with wonder. "You burn," she whispered, "even as you break." Behind them, the room darkened. Emergency systems failed. The tribunal's command matrix dissolved into white noise. Lights blinked red, then dimmed entirely. Something deep within the Concord vessel began to overload. System failure. Drones chimed in unison. Cognitive matrix destabilized. Eli stumbled, gripping the edge of console. "Did I do that?" "You did," the Aerolin said softly. "And you didn't. You're amplifying. A living signal. Signal of what?" She looked at him, a strange awe in her voice. Of defiance. Sirens blared. Gas hissed from the vents. Tribunal members began evacuating. A few shouted to have Eli restrained, but no one approached. They couldn't. Their minds were unraveling. Memories flooding, emotions surging, a tidal wave of humanity flooding an order built on suppression. Eli didn't understand how or why, but he knew one thing. They had tried to erase him for being a flaw, and instead, they had triggered something primal. Something even Earth didn't know it had. A weapon. Not of war, not of machines, but of unquantifiable, terrifying human will. As Eli collapsed to one knee, the Aerolin caught him. Her voice trembled. "They will come for you now." "Yeah," he breathed. "They always do." And all around them, the great Concord ship, flagship of order, balance, and control, shuddered like a beast in agony. The Concord called it containment. Earth called it an invasion. Less than 72 hours after Eli Mercer's accidental escape and subsequent disruption of the Concord Tribunal, 3 battlecruisers appeared in low orbit. Their intention was clear: isolate the anomaly, assess global threat levels, and, if necessary, neutralize the species. Eli, meanwhile, was sitting on a bench in Central Park with a cup of instant coffee, wearing the same clothes he'd been abducted in. He watched birds peck at breadcrumbs with the same tired expression he'd worn during his first chemotherapy session. Across from him sat Dr. Lena Torres, head of Earth's Concord liaison team, and arguably the most terrified person on the planet. "You shorted out a Class 7 tribunal ship," she said, voice trembling. "Do you understand what that means?" "I tripped and had a breakdown," Eli replied, sipping his coffee. "Didn't know that was a war crime." Lena leaned forward. "You didn't just break their systems. You infected them. Emotionally, cognitively. They're calling you a neurohazard. Some Concord species are still in psychiatric lockdown. You don't get it. They think you're a weapon." Eli exhaled. "Funny. Back home, I was barely even a person." Lena fell silent. She didn't know his history, but she could guess: the sunken cheeks, the fatigue behind the eyes, the way he flinched when people got too close. He had been small, invisible, the kind of person the world overlooks until it needs a symbol. "You're not a threat," she said carefully. "But the Concord doesn't care. They're scared. And when they're scared, they kill things." Eli finished. Behind them, a sudden hum passed through the air. A ripple, like reality had skipped a beat. Lena's tablet flared. "Oh no, they're broadcasting." From the sky, a voice boomed, translated into every major human language. "Citizens of Earth, surrender the human designate Eli Mercer. Failure to comply will result in strategic purification." Eli snorted. "They make it sound so polite." "Strategic purification means orbital bombardment," Lena whispered. "Then we better make sure they don't get what they want." Lena blinked. "You mean run?" "No," Eli said, rising slowly. "I mean fight." He didn't mean guns or ships. He meant something else entirely. In an underground Concord research lab hidden beneath the Swiss Alps, scientists pored over data from the tribunal incident. Neural readouts, emotion maps, psi-wave analysis. The conclusion was unthinkable. Eli Mercer's mind wasn't broken. It was evolved. Centuries of human struggle, mental illness, trauma, emotional complexity had created a mindscape so chaotic, so unpredictable, that Concord tech couldn't interpret it. Eli was the first known human whose brainwave patterns actively resisted Concord interface. And now, he could influence their systems. Directly, wirelessly. When Eli approached a military uplink outside the city, the guards hesitated, but the gates opened before he touched them. The AI recognized him, or rather, feared him. He entered, followed by Lena and half a dozen Earth representatives. "You want to plug into that?" Lena asked, gesturing to the alien relay tower. "You could fry your brain." "I already did that with ketamine and bad life choices," he muttered. "What's one more?" With no training, Eli placed his hands on the terminal. Instantly, the room pulsed. Screens flashed. Alarms silenced themselves. The Concord's orbital ships, watching from above, saw Earth's signal relay come alive with code they couldn't decrypt. Eli had become the virus. Not to destroy, but to share. Across the galaxy, Concord satellites began broadcasting fragments of Earth's emotional memory. Laughter under city lights, a mother holding her child, two teenagers dancing in a rainstorm. Soldiers weeping over lost friends. Protesters screaming. Lovers reuniting. Grief, rage, beauty. Billions of data packets flooded the psychic lattice. The Concord AI began to strain. Logic systems failed. Empathic servers overheated. Their technology had never been designed to process the full scope of human emotional bandwidth. The Ireland scientists from the tribunal watched the data scroll across her console. "They feel too much," she whispered, "and we were blind to it." The Concord's command network collapsed into silence. Back on Earth, Eli pulled away from the console, bleeding from the nose, but smiling faintly. "I didn't give them war," he said. "I gave them us." Lena stared at him. "They'll never see us the same again." "No," he said, breathing hard. "They'll see us clearly. The man they'd called the weakest had become something else. A lens, a mirror, and perhaps the galaxy's most unexpected revolution. Silence settled over the Earth. Not the silence of fear or submission, but of anticipation. High above, the once imposing Concord battlecruisers floated adrift, their synchronized movements fractured, their systems throttled by the aftershock of Eli Mercer's emotional broadcast. Across the stars, Concord command centers flickered with unresolved data. Reports came in of species experiencing hallucinations, lucid dreams, even spontaneous creative expression. Something had been released. On the ground, Eli slept. Not peacefully. His body thrashed with dreams not entirely his own. Images and voices echoed through his fractured mind. He saw alien children painting on walls with their claws, Concord soldiers discarding their weapons in sudden, unexplainable grief. He saw fear, awe, beauty, raw and unfiltered. Eli Mercer had become a psychic transmitter, not by design, but by experience, by pain. He had been the crack in the system through which all the light poured in. Lena Torres stood watch beside his bed, deep in Earth's secure bunker. Scientists monitored vitals. Politicians debated in hushed tones. No one dared touch him. Across the world, people rallied, not in panic, but in purpose. Eli's story had spread faster than any military order. The weakest man on Earth had faced the greatest power in the galaxy and made it blink. A boy in Lagos wrote a song about him. A sculptor in Kyoto carved his likeness out of scrap metal. In New York, children chalked his name in 1,000 colors across sidewalks. They didn't know his full story. They didn't need to. He had become what the Concord feared most. An idea. On the Concord flagship Vigilant Harmony, chaos had been contained, but only barely. Chancellor Virex floated in a zero-gravity chamber, flanked by 3 high command beings. They spoke in layered frequencies, communicating faster than speech. The anomaly cannot be allowed to live. Killing him may escalate the transmission. He has not declared war, but he has unmasked us. Their pride was fractured. For millennia, they had labeled chaos as weakness, emotion as defect. But Earth was a paradox they couldn't code into logic. A species built on volatility, surviving not despite their flaws, but because of them. We could suppress Earth. Suppression fuels resistance. Resistance fuels myth. The more we push, the more he spreads. They had quarantined contagions before. Viruses, revolutions, but never hope. Hope, they were learning, was harder to kill. Eli awoke 3 days later. He was thinner, pale, eyes sunken, but alert. He looked at Lena and spoke through cracked lips. Are they gone? She nodded. For now. What do they decide? That they can't decide anything. She handed him a glass of water. You paralyzed them, Eli. You made the most advanced minds in the galaxy question the foundation of their order. He drank, then chuckled weakly. That sounds exhausting. It is. Lena smiled. That's why we're protecting you. We've set up a global task force. No more Concord monitoring. No more Earth submission. We're on our own again. Eli's smile faded. No, you're not. She tilted her head. I'm still with you, he said. Even if I'm not me anymore. It was true. Scans showed that Eli's brain had permanently shifted. He could sense signals before machines. Feel emotional surges across rooms. Something in him had opened and stayed open. He wasn't just a survivor anymore. He was a messenger. Months passed. Earth changed. Not radically, but deeply. Art and science surged together. Nations, still flawed and fractured, began weaving empathy into policy. Concord emissaries withdrew, cautiously watching from a distance, studying the aftershocks of Eli's influence. And Eli? He never returned to normal life. Instead, he became a quiet presence, traveling, listening, connecting. He appeared in refugee camps and protest marches, in classrooms and research labs. Sometimes to speak, often just to feel, because what Eli had given Earth wasn't just defiance. It was reflection, proof that the very things we hide, our grief, our pain, our weaknesses, could, when embraced, become the sharpest tools of change. He had been discarded by evolution. But now, evolution followed his lead. The Concord would never forget the lesson that in a universe ruled by control, the most dangerous weapon was not a supernova or a war fleet. It was a fragile, scarred human soul, unwilling to give up, unwilling to stay quiet, and powerful enough to make the stars listen.